All right, Judges 19, let's call this one In Their Own Eyes and subtitle it Because We Can, because we have arrived at a chapter where it seems that that whole concept of each person doing what is right in their own eyes has spiraled out of control to the point where it becomes okay for at least one tribe, the tribe of Benjamin, especially around the area of Gibeah, to pretty much do whatever they feel they can get away with without consequence, and the effect that it's going to have on the livability of the environment for pretty much the entire nation. But understand, this is a chapter that describes, again, a Levite. This time it's going to describe his family circumstance as he takes on a concubine, something that might be questionable for a Levite to do in the first place. But it's going to describe his concubine as being unfaithful, and she's going to wander off and go back to her father's house. He's going to pursue her there and try to convince her to come back. And eventually he's going to be successful in doing that, but it's going to require him to pass through an area of Benjamin called Gibeah. And in traveling through Gibeah, he's going to come across an old man who's going to give him some wise counsel. And that's, you don't need to be staying out in the public square. And the only reason he's doing that in the first place is even though he's brought his own provision, he can't find anyone to give him hospitality. That's the first red flag. But the older man is going to invite him in and give him shelter, but that's not going to protect him, because this story is going to turn in a direction that's going to sound an awful lot like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, because that night, as the old man is entertaining the Levite and his concubine, he's going to get a knock at the door, but it's not going to be for any good purpose, because much like in the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, the men of Gibeah are going to knock on the door seeking to not so much know the man's concubine, but they want to get busy with the dude, ironically reminiscent to what we saw back in Sodom and Gomorrah. And likewise, reminiscent of that story, he is going to offer not only the man's concubine, but his own daughter to keep them away from the man. The man is going to step up and say, essentially, because he is here, he's caused the problem, and he's going to send his concubine out to the crowd, and the mob is going to rape this woman. And they're not just going to rape her, they're going to rape her until she dies. And ultimately it's going to say, even for the place to which Israel had descended during the period of the judges, this was something that had not been known or heard of before in Israel, and not since. And so he is going to take an absurd situation and make what might seem to be an even more absurd response, as he is going to divide up his concubine into 12 pieces and essentially mail a piece of her to all of the tribes in Israel, basically calling them to war to remedy the evil that has been done. But Benjamin's response, or the tribe of Benjamin's response, is going to be somewhat surprising, at least it was for me, when in the next chapter we're going to see that they're going to be unwilling to hold the people who are responsible for this woman's murder responsible. As a matter of fact, they're going to actually protect them, building up what we would otherwise call a wall of silence around the crime that was committed in their territory. And so, as we sometimes say, my prayer for you is my prayer for me, that we learn to understand the value in a genuine relationship with God. Why? Because we are looking at a period in Israel's history where, even though they're enjoying the freedom, each one to do whatever is right in their own eyes, much like we saw the devaluation of currency during a time of inflation, their relationship with God is taking on less and less value as they are becoming almost indistinguishable from godless nations at this point. Because even though Israel has now redefined God into an idol that essentially allows them to do whatever they want, their autonomy and their freedom has now rendered their society almost unlivable, as we now see it descend into a place where not only theft is common, but rape has been considered acceptable, which is why we often say God's best to you as you go forward in him, not redefining God into someone or something that allows us to do whatever we want, to the point where we essentially make our environment miserable or even unlivable.